At it again. We have another one here with Charlie Kirk. I'm assuming against another SJW. I'm sure Charlie Kirk will just absolutely destroy whatever argument this guy comes with. But let's take a look and find out. Hit that subscribe button if you're new, and make sure you hit that like button as well. If you would like to follow me on social media, all of my links are down below in the description box, as well as my Discord server, which is just a glorified chat room. It's totally free to join. It's the first link down below. But with all that being said, let's dive in.
Hey, Charlie. Thanks for coming. I want to ask a question about racism. I know you've argued that systemic racism in the U.S. doesn't exist. I wanted to point out some answers I think that's obviously wrong and see what you think about it. So,
here we go.
Just starting with the issue of crime, we know for a fact, because it's been studied pretty extensively, black people and people who aren't black or white people use drugs, commit nonviolent drug offenses at pretty much the same rates. Black people get arrested for these crimes about, I think, 2 to 3 times more often. It's dropping now that we've legalized weed in more and more states, which is a great thing that we've done. Even if you say that police are doing that not on purpose, but because they're just in areas where more violent crime is committed and they're patrolling, yeah. Isn't that an obvious example of something that black people have to deal with in this country that's much worse off for them than non-black people?
Okay, no, but any other point you want to make about systemic racism? So let me ask you a question. You believe there's systemic racism?
Just I would say that there's a lot of that black people have to deal with that makes them worse off in the country.
Okay, such as having to be around police all the time?
Yeah, because if you're around police, not because police, but because we have this, I think, law that you're going to get arrested for committing a nonviolent drug crime. So as an extension of that, you're around police more often. You're more likely to be arrested for that crime.
So look,
I mean, it's quite simple. Cops go where the most crime is. Why would they police an area where there's very little crime? That's a waste of time and resources. Cops should go where most of the crime is. And unfortunately, currently, most of the crime typically is in lower class black neighborhoods. That is a fact. So why would they go to the other side of town versus where statistically most of the crime is? Come on. Sheesh Louise. And it doesn't even have anything to do with being black. It's just where the crime is. It just so happens that it's black people that are committing most of these crimes. If it was a neighborhood full of white people that were doing the exact same things, I would fully expect there to be a heavy police presence. It has to do with crime, not skin color. But of course, here in America, we got to make everything about skin color. And I dropped a YouTube short about that yesterday. So definitely go and check that out if you haven't seen that. I think it's titled Everyone Needs to Watch This or something. Definitely check it out. But anyway, let's jump back into this video. It's crazy.
Look, here's the thing. So in 2018, blacks made up 53% of all the homicide offenders in America. No one wants to say it out loud, but blacks commit more crimes than whites and Asians and Hispanics. In fact, there's a disproportionate amount of crime committed by blacks in America. And so, therefore, you're going to have a heavier police presence.
Truth is the
truth. And so, why is that happening? I believe there's a fatherlessness epidemic happening in America.
Facts.
And I really don't have a soft spot for the argument hey, there's too many police around, therefore I can't, deal crack without being interrupted. Not exactly very compelling to me, okay? Now,
Facts.
Secondly, let me say this, though, is that there are issues, if you want to just talk strictly racial, that are disproportionately affecting white America, such as opioids and fentanyl. Not to say that blacks are not affected by this, but it is a disproportionate rural issue. Now, why would that be? Well, white individuals, because of the industrial kind of growth in America, were more likely to get involved in muscular trades in Ohio and Pennsylvania, especially in steel mill towns and such. Therefore, they'd be more what? Likely to get injured at work. So you get likely to get injured at work because of the Sackler family, which you and I could probably agree are a bunch of criminals who should be put in prison for a long period of time. They started to overprescribe Oxycontin, into the communities, and therefore getting these people addicted to the high of an opioid and then searching for other places to go there. So we could play these kind of racial games all the time. Is it fair for someone in Southeast Ohio who's white, who was a son of a steel mill worker, and all these things, that they might have been more exposed to this sort of thing? I think the hyper-racialization of all that is less important than the real, more fundamental question, which is, why does race matter in any of this? And I say it doesn't. I don't like looking at people through a racial lens. If you want to do that, which I said, the statistics are not good at all. In fact, it shows that there's an under-policing problem in black neighborhoods across America. In fact, 50% of homicides go unsolved in Chicago, 50%, because of lack of detectives and lack of police in a lot of these areas. And kind of for your daily thought crime, police prevent crime, and they did prevent crime in New York City. New York City was one of the most dangerous, murderous cities in the 1980s and early 1990s, and someone who I think gets unnecessarily mocked and smeared, Rudy Giuliani, became mayor and cleaned up that entire city. And to his credit, liberal Democrat who ran for president, Mike Bloomberg, continued those policies. And so, look, any thoughts on that really quick, because I want to get some other questions. But
yeah, I think I wasn't disagreeing at all that police do a lot of great work. The
Okay.
only problem with that is that is a true fact that a factual extension of the fact that police are in certain areas more often means that if society has laws, those laws are going to be enforced more often. I think most.
What does he mean by crappy laws? A law is a law. Like, if you break the law, you're getting arrested.
well, okay, but I don't think the law against. Okay, sorry to interrupt, but I don't think a law against dealing crack is a bad law.
Okay, but what about weed?
What about weed? I think
the same applies for weed. You're much more likely to get arrested, and even if this isn't happening as much now, it happened much more often in the past. You're much more likely to get arrested.
So there's been plenty of studies done by Harvard and Maryland showing there was actually an under-policing problem in a lot of these communities. You and I could.
Before he continues on, I do think that the thought process on weed is changing here in America, right? And it's beginning to kind of shift more towards looked at like alcohol, right? But at the end of the day, what's illegal is illegal. So if you break the law, don't cry when you are arrested and charged for breaking the law. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Now, do I believe that at some point in time in the future, every state and in every state, weed will be legal? Yeah, I do believe that. I do believe that. I think that is the direction. And I want to say there was a poll that was taken. And I want to say even amongst folks on the right, they were in favor of legalizing weed. So I do believe, and obviously we know the left wants to, so that's not even a question. But when you have a majority of people on the right even starting to say some of those same things, I definitely think it will happen eventually. But once again, it's illegal. So it hasn't happened yet. So if you get caught with it now, don't cry when you get arrested. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. It just hasn't happened yet. So follow the law. Folks break the law and then cry when they're held accountable for breaking the law. It's just like, what? What did you expect?
Do statistics all day long because I'm sure that there's plenty that you could cite. But first of all, I'm not a fan of legalizing marijuana. I think it's a really bad idea. But I can probably agree with you that there is a problem with locking people in prison for an extended period of time for using marijuana. But there's another more fundamental question, which is this, which is you can get into sentencing, right, which is usually kind of a talking point, which is that the most important thing when it comes to your likelihood of going to jail if you commit a crime is less about your skin color and more about your wealth and how competent of a counsel you can hire. Right? And so, for example, LeBron James, if Bronny, gets caught dealing crack, which I don't think he will, he's going to have the best lawyer on the planet representing him that will be filing motions for dismissal, cross-examination of evidence, all sorts of different things. So it's less about race, isn't it? I mean, if Denzel Washington kids or Oprah's God kids did that, it's more about really a wealth problem, right? So then you would say, well, it's because of racism. Well, no, it's not. Blaming wealth inequality between races, which I don't like doing, but if you want to play that game strictly on racism, is a sloppy way to look at things. So the perspective we have is a perspective of Thomas Sowell, which is you look at the whole body of work, you'll see that just because you have disparate outcomes does not mean you could solely blame discrimination. And I'll prove it to you with one data point, and then we'll move on, which is this, which is that you can have different data points that have outcomes, and there's other factors that play in. So for example, San Francisco and New York are far wealthier than Missoula, Montana, and Birmingham, Alabama. Why? Someone would say, racism. Well, no, it's not. Mountain towns and inland cities are just less likely to be around commerce and trade. And port cities, by definition, are always wealthier. That has nothing to do with race and everything to do with geography. So what does that example have to do? Sometimes you can have disparate outcomes with data, and attributing racism to it is actually not just imprudent, it's really, really detrimental and harmful. So one thing that I would agree with that we need to do, put fathers back into the home, which is very, very important. In 1965, marriage rates in the black community were about 80%. Now it's plummeted down to 20 to 25%. There's a lot of reasons for this, subsidizing single motherhood through the Great Society and many other things. But there's other factors that play in. How many words is a child hearing at home? Is the child getting read to on a daily or weekly basis by parents? Those things transcend race. And in fact, the hyperfixation on kind of systemic racism, I think, kind of creates a smokescreen that disallows us from actually finding meaningful solution to these problems. So thank you. We got to get to the next question. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Facts. I do believe one of the biggest problems, if possibly not the biggest problem, is the fatherless homes. Kids need a dad. And that's not to say that mothers aren't important and play a very important role. You know, I don't want to diminish the role of mothers. Obviously, without moms and women, none of us would be here. Now, it takes two to tango, but you get what I mean. But kids need that father figure. I mean, it's been proven time and time again. We've checked out a number of videos that have highlighted, even studies show that. So, yeah, I do believe that is one of the big problems. Anyway, yeah, y'all let me know what you thought about this one in the comment section below. What did you think about what I had to say? Do you think there are more issues in terms of the fatherless home and the marriage crisis? Well, that's going on currently. Let me know in the comment section below. Like, share, comment. Hit that subscribe button before you go. Peace and love. I'm out.